you can't just build a website anymore. It's just, it almost doesn't matter. You need software that allows you to build experiences and then share those experiences across any channel at any time that you are going to encounter a user.
Welcome to the Agile Digital Transformation Podcast, where we explore different aspects of digital transformation and digital experience with your host, Tim Butera, Content and Community Manager at AgileDrop.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm joined today by Michael Paige, Chief Technology Officer at R2 Integrated, an award-winning digital experience agency based in Baltimore, Maryland. He's also an Adobe Summit and Adobe Virtual Summit speaker with over 25 years of experience in the digital space, which makes him the perfect guest for today's episode. We'll be discussing processes that are needed to facilitate digital transformation initiatives and guarantee that they're successful. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Anything you want to add to the intro before we jump into the questions?
Probably just the fact that I started out my career as a developer, right? So it's funny to see how far, the industry's come, where it really doesn't require much development as much as it's, requires an understanding on how to piece together, in some cases, best-in-class technology into something that makes sense for your organization. I think that just makes it much more accessible for companies, and I think that's part of what's pushing this transformation. Is it's no longer just a core, group of IT nerds in some, back office, but it's on all levels of the C-suite. And I think for me, just to watch that industry transform is super exciting.
Yeah, that's a great way to kick off the episode. Awesome. So with all this in mind, let's open things up with what would you say is the most fail-safe approach to digital transformation in the 21st century? So especially the latest years.
So I think for years, it was always for me like platform extensibility. How do you create a future-proof system? I think in the last 2 years, it's been organizational extensibility. Like, how can your organization change or, really, add new capabilities and add new functional imperatives, or shift how people work in roles, or shift what their imperative would be into something, that's new. And it's because there's been a new piece of technology that's created you greater access, or a new piece of technology that has taken the time or effort to implement, say, a data layer and made it almost immediate. So you have, you've pulled back this, this whole, deployment much earlier so you can be smarter. So it really is about how can your organization really be ready for change? And I think that is the part to me that is probably the most challenging, but also the most exciting. And it's really, kind of pivoting that conversation. So, organizations are excited about, the rapidity of change and how their job is going to be different, rather than historically, somewhat horrifying the prospect, right? So it's winning hearts and minds, right? And understanding that organizational flexibility or extensibility is the key to success and transformation, the absolute key. And the rest of it is product, in a lot of ways.
Okay, let's maybe first talk about the technology aspect, and we'll move on to the people or the more organizational aspects later. Why would you say that it's so important for companies to evolve alongside the technologies that they're using, and how should they approach this evolution?
Yeah, I think at this point, especially in COVID, if you don't, you're losing money, and you're losing money every day because you're not getting eyeballs digitally, or you're not able to variate your message quickly, or you're not able to sell product. I mean, most of our customers, I think, were shocked with how far behind they are, and even some of our larger enterprise customers are just now reacting to what they've learned, because in some cases they're in travel and hospitality, so obviously budget's kind of thinned out. But I think it's just taking stock of where they are now and understanding that they've got some significant gaps, and those significant gaps are preventing them actually from realizing the benefit of some of the tech that they've invested in, because it's holistic. It's not, you can't just build a website anymore. It's just, it almost doesn't matter. You need software that allows you to build experiences and then share those experiences across any channel at any time that you are going to encounter a user. In order to do that, you need content creation, you need data, and then you need those pipes to make sure that the content can be matched to the individual that the data is telling you that wants to hear that message. So I think it's whether you have complete laggards and maybe in manufacturing who are looking to maybe sidestep the supply chain a little bit and maybe go a little bit more direct to consumer. We've helped some manufacturers do that. Conterra would be one of them. Where it's really being able to buy a SureFlow pump online instead of going to really a middleman. So it's really accelerating the revenue generation capability by going to direct to consumer. In order to do that, you really had to have all of the pieces in line, right? You need to have an experience generation machine, you need to have a data machine, you need to have the ability to transact. So you need a commerce engine, you need analytics to understand where the sticking points are at. And then you need the way to kind of optimize, that point. So that's a lot for an organization to kind of get their head around, especially sometimes in some of the organizations that are, traditionally a little bit behind the time. So it's really helping them navigate, it's really how do you maximize your revenue? And I think making sure that, most companies understand that in order to, you're transforming for a reason. You're transforming to grow your business. Sure, it's an expense, absolutely. But you have to keep your eye on the fact that your business goal is to increase your revenue. I mean, that is, and no matter that be, selling a product or converting it, whatever it would be, right? It could just be demand gen so that you're getting more, more customers, more patients, more people, whatever it would be, right? It's just, in the end, you're trying to drive increase in revenue. And then how do we keep our eye on that prize? And then back into, with that business goal, what are the KPIs to do that? How do we attribute success? And then how do we bring in the tools, the technologies, and the ways of working in order to achieve that goal? So, that's I think the best approach is to make sure you never get your eyes off that prize. Absolutely.
That's an excellent point about this need for more holistic digital experiences rather than just a brand website. So this comprises kind of this allows you to meet the customer at any touch point where they're interacting with your brand digitally, and it allows for a much better customer experience. And also you're able to innovate better if you have your finger on the pulse of these things all the time.
Actually, it's so funny. It used to be something that was, I think, an ideal for, to really have those, cross-channel experiences that were not disjointed. It's like, oh, that's where we want to be. I would argue now that it's necessary because, if you have experiences that are disconnected and your customers moving through your funnel and they're like, quizzically, do they understand? Do you even know why I'm here? So if you go from an email and then you're pushing someone on web and your messaging has changed, that actually is going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. It's not, there's no forgiveness. The customer at this point is extremely fickle and they expect us to know. I mean, we decry privacy, right? We all want to make sure that, our data is safe, but at the same point, when we actually meet something or be given ads that are either we've already made that purchase, right? So I can watch. And granted, I'm in the industry, so I get a little bit more frustrated when I know that I legit just bought this product and you're still smashing me on Insta with an ad. I mean, come on. How about cap and suppression? Like, these are baseline things, but it's really making sure that it's more like you should know me. Like, I legit am in your CRM. You actually have a transaction from it, and yet you're still kind of spamming me with stuff I don't need. So I think organizations need to take this idea of being more obsessed, and this is a Gartner sort of evolution, but they need to be more obsessed because I think their customers are expecting them to really understand who they are, where they are in their purchase flow, and what's next. Because we're all busy, right? And nobody wants to see stuff that does not matter. And I think that's only going to grow, and it's probably growing every day. Absolutely.
And also, it's like, I know that you have all of this data on me, and if you have it, then use it. Don't just keep it. Use it for my benefit. And as you said, I just bought a product from you. Why advertise the exact same product to me? Advertise similar, related products to me. There's a much higher chance of me buying, another piece of something, another musical instrument, for example, than buying the exact same one a week after I purchased it.
It's crazy. Matter of fact, it actually, in some ways, gives me a little pause with the organization that you can't fundamentally understand that I literally just bought this. Like I just bought it. Now I give you, if it was 24 hours ago, I'll give you, there's some latency, maybe a day's worth of latency, right? But after that, I mean, it's been weeks on some of this stuff, and especially now, I mean, all of my commerce is digital, so it's all getting tracked, right? I know it's all getting tracked. So just level up your organizational capability to understand, that data is going to drive your messaging. So I want the message to be correct, and I want the data to be not so latent, not weeks or months. So you just need to build a machine where you're able to connect those digital transactions. I know it's in commerce. I know the data is where it should be, right? Just make sure that gets into, Adobe Target or is somewhere, right? So that you're not, there's some attribute saying, don't give him another ad on this because he's already got it. And by the way, you'll save money. Like that's the crazy part, right? You're actually going to save money because you just paid to show me the same thing 10 times in the last 2 weeks, which is also insane. So it's really like, and then we get back to its revenue, right? So, it is revenue generating. I get that. And I'm going to kind of back off that a little bit, but at the same point, watch your spend rate. I mean, you protect your revenue by just being smart on how you spend. And there are simple things that, you can just do just to cap and suppress your media and just make sure that the messaging is on target. Those things also, they go right to your bottom line. So, I think by and large, be smart about how you do things and be focused on data, because that really is the key.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, even if you're not trying to be super customer centric, it's your own advertising budget that you're cutting into if you're showing me useless and irrelevant ads, or I mean, ads that are no longer relevant because I already acted on it,
Absolutely. Yeah. You just go into your commerce engine, do an export on IDs, what products they have, send it to your media company and say, suppress these individuals, right? We don't need to do that. But it's a hot second's worth of work, right? But it's just, I think that's when we get in organizational extensibility. That's probably not somebody's job, right? It's probably, there's probably an implementer in there or an agency, and there's a couple of agencies, and nobody really on the client, I think in this case, is orchestrating how their teams work together, right? Because there's gaps, and there's an expectation that, depending on where your organization, that you would navigate that, right? And we do that for our customers. We navigate the fact that it's not just us there, right? It's an interagency team, and we all need to work together, and we need to make sure that, we're pushing the product. We may not, we may be building, Web 3.0, right? And we're doing the analytics and the targeting, the personalization. We have a ton of data, but there's another team doing Marketo. It doesn't mean that we don't want to stitch that Marketo ID in every AM page so that we've got that online to offline transfer. And that means that our organizations need to work together to push these products further. So I think, a big gap in a lot of companies is they bring in these different players, right? And they put them in their silos, right? Purposefully. In some cases, they're trying to mitigate risk and don't want to put everything into a bucket. And there's a million terms for it, right? But nobody's holistically looking at, well, how is all this going to work together? Because it's completely and utterly interconnected. Adobe wouldn't be selling a suite of products if it wasn't in fact 100% interconnected, and Oracle's in the game, and they're all in the game now, right? They're all in the game of selling these Swiss Army knives of marketing, right? But in order to do it, you need to understand the functional imperative of each tool and then how each tool works together, because you can easily implement these and they can be disconnected out of the box. And I think that's probably the most enjoyable part of getting into an organization who's got all these tools and they're not realizing the value of it. And you realize that, sometimes they don't have a checkbox for A for T, which is analytics and Adobe Target working together. Like simple things that we can just go in and make sure that they're hooked up. And then to really kind of fire on that always on experience machine, as long as they can get the content in, right? We can show them quickly how you can start to honestly just use category affinity, like just have analytics watch what people are doing on the site. And then when they come back to the site, we're offering up things that we know that they're interested in, right? And that's a very simple way to really start to put the right messaging in front of your clients, which is, kind of the media idea, right? But even simpler, right? And it's completely in your own ecosystem. So all you have to do is make sure that you've got those pieces put together. So I think when I talk about organizational extensibility, I mean, that needs to be a job in an organization. Even if they don't know how to do it, they should always be looking out for the fact that there are opportunities that are potentially left on the table because no one's orchestrating all the different vendors, implementers who are representing all the different products that you purchased. And that to me is probably one of my most favorite things to do in an organization is to stop and then really elevate that conversation around, well, how is all this going to work together? Right. And that usually starts with a conversation around testing and personalization, really, because that's where you can start to get an organization to really think about, well, what are my outcomes here? Like, what are we going to do with all of these tools? Because sometimes they buy them because they know they need them, and at some point in that supply chain, in that procurement process, in that implementation, in that launch, that vision is somewhat a little muddled. Right? We have to kind of bring it, and it's not thrown away work, but we just have to bring it back and say, okay, how are these technologies going to work in concert to manage experiences across channels? And that really is the most enjoyable. That's really that's really where transformation is. Mm-hmm. It's that last 10%, honestly. It really is. And it's probably not where most of the work is, but it's the frosting, right? It is. That's the piece that really transforms. Other than that, you just got a lot of tools and a lot of latent capability left on the table, and that happens more often than not.
I love it how you're transitioning into the next question and making a great introduction for it, because as you just alluded to, having the right technologies and having the right tools and putting everything together is just one part of the equation. And the other part of the equation are the people and the organizational aspects that are actually enabling, empowering all this. So how does the people aspect factor into all of this? How do the people and organizational aspects or features transform alongside these technology changes that we established previously?
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, and that's why I get back to organizational extensibility is key. I mean, you can have all of this tech that will grow and modify, and it's mostly cloud-based, so it's pretty much getting updated every day without you even knowing it. You have new functionality. All of these things are happening, right? But the organization needs to embrace that. I mean, you really have to understand that the leader is like it's really one person. It's the customer is really the focus for all of this, right? So the whole organization needs to get behind the fact that it needs to be focused 100% on the customer. And that's something that, you need citizen data scientists, you need people who understand testing, you need people who no matter what they do in the organization, there's a piece of technology that can further their business. They need to understand what that technology is. They need to own it, and they need to know how they're going to impact it. And I'm not saying you have to be a programmer, because these are not things that require any technical ability. You just need to know, here's a tool, like a hammer, like a screwdriver, like a ratchet. How am I going to use it to solve my problem? And if you, as an organization, don't adopt that mentality, then you're not going to use those tools. Or even worse, a subset of your organization who doesn't understand the overall business impact, right, that can happen, is managing access, which is even worse, right? Because then it becomes, just like you're not connecting some of these tools, you're not connecting the right people in the organization to these tools because you bought them for them. That's and it may have happened at a C-suite level, right? Where they came in and they bought this amazing suite and they implemented it. But the thing that has to happen is the individuals on the ground who are really going to leverage these tools need to have a sense of ownership and an idea of what those tools do to make their day-to-day job better, different, and in some cases radically changed, right? And I think that's the part where organizational change management is often overlooked, or training is the first thing cut in an implementation budget, right? But even worse, it's just sometimes just messaging why the technology has been purchased. Instead of, well, we're replacing whatever. It's never a reason, well, that software was old or whatever it would be, right? Those aren't actual reasons. The reason is that we want a demand generation experience on all of our digital properties. And Eloqua, Marketo, whatever it is the core of this, because it's going to manage those moments, right? It's going to learn from what's happening. It's going to variate the message. It can talk to, it's really about taking not the what, but the what can it do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we have to elevate the conversation. I think as a consultant, that's kind of our job, because it's a complex story to tell, right? So I think we're beholden to deliver that message. But I think organizations need to understand that that's not a land and expand approach, or it's not a sales pitch. This is how you pay this off, because the individuals in the organization need to understand how to use this. Mm-hmm. So it's not a line item in a budget, right? It's not. It is critical for success, because I've shown up at a lot of, we actually have an assessment. We actually go into an organization, and one of it happens to be for personalization. In this case, let's use Adobe Target, where it's just not actually being utilized. Like, it's just sitting there. They've done a couple of tests, like an A/B test, right? And they did that like a fraction of the population. Other than that, nobody has any idea what to do with it. And we show them the power of changing a button label or a color, or maybe moving something from up top to below, or category affinity. I talked about that, or recently viewed. Like, if you have a site that eventually is looking to generate revenue, you can use some of these very basic elements just to get content that is more interesting in front of a user. Because we've all been on a site, we give it like 10 seconds. If we don't see what we want, we're bombed. But it'd be very easy to use lookalike modeling to say, oh God, you're coming in, and based on whether it be ambient data or some sort of algorithm to determine that you might look like me, that you might like this. Those simple things can massively impact click-through, massively impact, add to cart. And they're very, very simple. But you need that mentality in an organization to realize that these tools are there for you to drive revenue. And then you have to ask yourself, well, how do I drive revenue with that? And then that starts the exploration of like, well, do I change the messaging? Do I change the call? Well, like, what can we do to test and learn to see what our users are doing? And that's really the first path, or the first step in personalization. Oftentimes we think personalization is this massive data-driven AI over, it's all of this complexity, right? Where it really isn't. It really actually isn't. It's like, hey, here's 4 outcomes. We think that one of these or 2 of these might be better for this segment, right? And it could be as simple as that. Or we're not sure if any of this is going to work, but we can see a winner after 30 days, and maybe we can then enact that winner, to be the new every experience, and maybe we see a lift in sales by 2%. Now, depending on the size of the company, 2% could be a lot, right? It could be. So I think that's the mentality that companies have to get into. It's really, how is this going to impact my business? And I think if we can get the organization to extend how they think about these tools, or how they think about their jobs, I think that's the missing piece that I think a real strong partner can help drive in your organization. Super passionate about it, because it's often, even as an implementer, right? If we can't shift attendant attitudes or create that, that test and learn culture, I know that they're not going to be super happy with what we did in 6 months, right? So, we need to be able to push that, and just start small. Like, just start small, do something, because it just snowballs like everything, right? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, you can start without starting, essentially.
You can't, right? And don't make it complicated. Like, don't. Personalization is so scary for, like, I'm talking to a small regional credit union, right? Well, that small is relative, right? They're not that small, but in their, so the entire world is short-staffed, right? Them included. Like, it's shocking, like, the amount of attrition organizations have. It's really about, they're so afraid of potentially having an uptick in sales or revenue that they won't even be able to process, which is nuts, right? So they're afraid of being crushed by demand. Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Wow.
like, yeah, it's crazy, right? So we can show them, and I say, okay, well, listen, let's start here. All right. And I actually ended up talking to the head of digital. I said, well, let's start here. And then let's just do like the smallest segment. Like let's test, maybe a 10th of the population or 1%, like whatever they feel good about. And let's just see within that small group what can happen, right? And then from that, we can measure the impact. So if they feel like, demand goes up, say 6%, we can extrapolate what does that look like? And then maybe we run something and they step up a little bit to kind of push. So it's really like literally I'm having this conversation, right? Because it's really about getting them to not be afraid of potentially being successful. And that is not the organization that's every organization at this point is short-staffed. So a byproduct of that change is really fear that this is going to make, my job harder. Because remember, we're dealing with people. Like my kids, they ask me what I do for a living, right? And I don't actually explain it to them. I'm not even sure. But I actually just say in the end, I'm like, I'm in the relationship business. I'm in the people business, without question. I am trying to make people feel good about technology and trying to build relationships with them and that technology to accelerate their ability to be successful in life, right? I want them to work less. I mean, there's a chance that this could be a 4-day work week. Things get easier if you could just adopt this way of working, right? But in this COVID time, it's almost the inverse, right? Because people are staffed so thin, they're actually afraid to reach or afraid to kind of push that. But it's really having those conversations and saying, listen, it's okay. Like we're going to be okay here. We're just going to start testing in this small way. Because my goal is to get the organization to really, see the value in the tech that they bought, right? And then the value in us as a partner, but it's also not there to break the organization, right? So there becomes this balance. And adoption is funny. It's it could either be, just fear of not knowing, could be fear of being overwhelmed. It could just be, oh, it's just another thing on my list I got to figure out. Now I got to take this course, and I've got 3, whatever it would be, right? But we're talking about people. We have to explain to them that we can approach this in a way that's super positive, So the most, that also is like, it's important. It's just so important that we don't forget that, people, they're the operators of this tech. And we have to remember that people are complicated.
I love that point, about how it's all people, even if it's companies, even in a B2B context, it's just that's why I love the phrase H to H, even though it's almost kind of wanting to become a cliche, but yeah. I think it really accurately depicts something that we tend to forget when we're working in the tech and in the digital, that it's just humans, You're a human designing experiences for other humans, and you're supervised by humans. And it's just humans. It's not a company or a customer. The company is made up of humans, and the customer is a human. So it's just really basic.
Yeah. It's all relationships. All just different ways of looking at relationships, right? And I think we tend to we lose that, right? Somehow they don't print that in the brochure for CMS or a test or an analytics package, right? But it is.
And relationships are one of the most unique and kind of intrinsic parts of the whole human experience, right? Without relationships, we wouldn't be able to do anything. Like imagine how would a single person 50,000 years ago ever be able to take on like a mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger if they were alone? No chance.
I mean, we could drop back to my parallel, how annoyed I am about getting served the same ads over and over again. I mean, Parson is like, you should know me.
Yeah.
Like I bought your stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you should know me. Like I'm not offended, but I'm kind of offended. Like you should know me, right? I'm frustrated by that. So I think it's like, because I have a relationship with you. I do. Like, and I want to make sure, that you see me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just human nature. That really is just human nature.
I love that you started talking about personalization and we're focusing on it so much now, because I just recently, just a few days before we're recording this, I published an article about finding the balance with personalization. And these are exactly the things that I wrote about. Don't target users with ads for the exact same products that they've just purchased, because probably they don't want to purchase the exact same product. Or if it's like something like once in a lifetime purchase, maybe don't advertise a boat to them after they've just bought a boat,
Like literally, right? Just stop it.
Yeah.
Just stop it. Yeah, I know. It's just, I think people, people who, own data in an organization, or people who own the tools to have that messaging, just really need to work on the fact that we need to get latency out of the problem, right? The data needs to be moved directly, have a CDP conversation. You can there's lots of ways you can get data closer to the, the tools that need to activate it to get that right message, but it needs to be on the forefront of how people are thinking, just because, waste, grift, annoyance, whatever you say, just the messaging is so important, important to customers.
And yeah, the competition is also greater because of COVID and the digitalization. So obviously, COVID has had a huge impact. We already touched upon the impact it has had on how companies are approaching digital transformation. So what have you seen that be the biggest impact of COVID on how companies are approaching this and how companies are accelerating?
So I think it's, to me, it's more, it's transactional. I mean, I think a lot of companies have to think about how they are selling product. Absolutely. And I think you see that because, the more, I think, unfortunately, the more other companies or other organizations are between you and your customers, the greater chance for a breakdown. Just like the supply chain breaks down, right? Just that, the ability for a customer to source your product can also, it can't be interrupted, right? So you need to have control over that. So I think a lot of organizations are thinking about, what does B2B really mean? And, should it be B2C? And we get back into people. I mean, your B2B people are still customers, right? So are there ways that, I can respect my supplier, right? Because I want, suppliers are important. I want to respect my reseller, whether that be, an organization that is reselling my product or a series of products, right? I want to maybe it's an agent, right? Or, an agent type broker who I have, 4,000 field reps, right? That are calling customers on my behalf, right? So they're also kind of my customers. And then I have people who are actually in the field. So I feel like, when you talk about, I think manufacturing in particular, I'm not talking about, buying a $50 million printer, right? Or printing press, right? I'm talking about, there are products, like Pentair, which is a SureFlow water pump that the RV community is hungry for, right? If you're building a Class B RV, you want to put a water pump inside you want to be able to buy that. And I can go on the line and buy that right now. I don't have to go buy it from someone else, right? I can go right to the source and get that pump. So that to me there's expedience there. And then of course, there's increased revenue, right? Because I'm able to go direct to consumer. So I think that, I think COVID has made that transaction the focus for a lot of companies. I think you'll start to see that even in CPG companies, who are, especially the fact that, people didn't go to the grocery store, people are buying more online, buying direct online. I think that's a game changer. I mean, you can, I got ice cream delivered. It was cold packed in dry ice, and I got ice cream delivered. It was special ice cream, right? But I got it delivered. So that's normal now, right? I mean, that's normal now. So I think, organizations, companies need to figure out, how could I get product to the ultimate consumer, and how can I do that efficiently and profitably? And I think that to me is the biggest challenge, because I think we learned that, there's a lot that happens in the middle that can gum up those works, right? So I think that's going to be the most interesting conversations that we're having with our clients.
Yeah, and it's a trend that's not going away anytime soon, right? People have gotten used to the comfort of ordering everything online, and even after stores open back up and you're able to go, maybe even mask-free to a grocery store. Why do that? Why drive? Maybe in some cases, if you live out in the country and you don't live near a supermarket or a big store, why would you drive an hour and spend maybe copious amounts of money on gas and whatnot and time? To get the same things that you can order online much more efficiently and much more hassle-free.
I have 6 of these shirts. I bought one of them, I liked it, and I bought 5 others in different colors. All right, because I don't necessarily want to go to a store. I don't. So I'm buying couches, new place. All my couches are being bought online. It's just. I think that is, that's our new normal, and regardless of variants or whatever is going to happen in COVID, I think we just kind of rethought, what going to the store means really. I'm not saying that, there's still my 14-year-old daughter's going to the mall. That's not going to change. Right. But her dad probably isn't, so I think that's the disruptive nature of COVID is, what is remote work and remote life really like? And I think that's going to be, actually, it's funny. So I'm building a Class B RV. So I bought a brand new Ford Transit. I actually got one, which was a shocker. And in that, I can actually, because it's got its own built-in Wi-Fi, I actually can broadcast my whereabouts to an Amazon delivery. So Amazon will deliver to my Class B RV. Now, granted, I'm sure there are some exceptions, or there are probably places that's going to take a little bit longer. But to me, I was like, first of all, I love Amazon for those types of like disruptive things that they do, right? And I know it's a little bit of showboating, but that's super cool. They're also going to space, so whatever. But I will use that because I can use it, and I almost have to use it, right, as a technologist. But I think that right there shows I think how we're all thinking differently about how we work and how we live. And as a result, I think businesses have to react to that. Absolutely. So I'm super excited to order coffee, from Amazon and have it delivered to me at some obscure place, probably by the beach if I can, in Charleston, Rhode Island, or wherever the heck I end up, right? I think that would be awesome. It would absolutely be awesome. And who knows, maybe it's ice cream. Maybe that's what I have delivered, right? Because I know I'm going to be there from 12 to 4 tomorrow, and I can go on dryers and I can order ice cream and it's going to be there. And I got 5 kids I'm feeding. So I think that would be something. And I would save a ton of money because, ice cream at the beach is expensive, right? So, there's, I think that is, to me, that's where commerce and the culture around commerce is going to change. So, I'm, listen, I'm hardly a commerce visionary, but I certainly know it's going to be different. And we probably don't even understand how much it's going to be different. But boy, what a fun ride that's going to be. So I think it's just getting customers ready to sell stuff online. I think that's the part I'm most jazzed about. And I think that's where personalization comes from, really. That's really that impact, because that's that first step, right? The first step of having some transactional nature on your site is being able to make suggestions based on product. Now, you may not be able to buy it there, but it could be a one-click link to Amazon or Peapod to have, or wherever it would be, right? Wherever the transaction's actually going to happen, the digital property that you end up on has to be thinking about, well, how do I get someone to add to cart? Like, really, that's what it's all about, right? Now, I don't know where that cart's going to be added to. It may not matter, but that's the first step, right? So, and building web presences, and I'll go back to Pantera. That was a journey with Pantera, right? So eventually they wanted to go direct to consumer. So we did designs and built solutions for them that allowed for that, right? That allowed for eventually that product suggestion became a product category, which became a product. So building that thought process in is important, because it's hard to, if you go at a site in a traditional mindset, not thinking about its evolution, then you probably have designed yourself into a corner, right? So, which is a problem, right? So your UX has to be thoughtful, and how is it going to accept, whether it be a shopping cart button or whether it be a product page. Like, how is it going to accept that? Because that is where we are going, right? And then even stepping back into, like, and I'll get a little nerdy, even a design pattern that says, okay, so the CMS is going to own the glass, right? But eventually, I'm going to plug in behind the scenes, like a Magenta or a hybrid, some engine that's going to drive commerce. But I don't want I don't want the user to see that. I don't want them to move to a different platform, right? I want eventually my site on Tuesday to be non-transactional and on Wednesday be transactional, right? And all of that happening in the background, and my digital presence owns that glass, right, across everything. So everything's happening through, an AEM, for instance, right, where everything's kind of coming through that. So, I think that, which is the most flexible way to deploy. So I think those are the kind of conversations that, we're having with clients. And it's really about, like, being super thoughtful about where we're going to be in a year or 2 years, because we've all learned that if you were not ready for that during COVID, you lost a ton of money. You shut out a whole bunch of customers who wanted to buy stuff from you because you couldn't serve it up. I think that's a lesson. Hopefully that is not lost, as we hopefully come out of this, knock on wood, or it changes.
Michael, this was a great note to finish on. I think we covered a lot of really interesting points. I think our listeners will benefit from a lot of awesome and unique insights. This has been a really great conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And it was only 22 minutes, right? We said.
We said in the beginning that if we'll go where the conversation takes us, and I think it can be, people can get more value out of a conversation like this rather than if we were just super strictly following a set of questions and just had like a Q&A session, basically. Yeah. So yeah, just before we wrap things up, if our listeners wanted to reach out to you or learn more about you or R2 Integrated, where can they reach you?
I'm sure the PR team wrote that down for me, but I guess just me. M Paige, MPAIGE at r2integrated.com, or potentially just hit our website, and you can connect with us there.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure to link all of those. Thanks again, Michael. And to our listeners, that's all for this episode. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
And stay safe.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out our other episodes, you can find all of them at agiledrop.com/podcast, as well as on all the most popular podcasting platforms. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes, and don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and colleagues.